Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else. Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing from AXR Recruitment and Search. I'm Andrew Cannock and I'm a specialist recruiter in sales and category. Today, I'm joined by Chris Baddock and Jon Bradshaw. Chris and Jon are both experienced business leaders who spent their formative years in large companies before establishing their own coaching and consultancy practices. And today we're talking to them about their roles as mentors in the MindPick peer-to-peer mentoring program. We cover their career journeys, their expert perspectives on leadership, and their experience so far with the MindPick program. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Chris, Jon, thanks so much for coming on.
Welcome.
It's great to have you here today.
Pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to jump in with the question we ask everyone first up on the pod. Chris, I'll come to you first. What's your favorite brand? And you can't pick one that you've worked on.
It's a really hard question. I had to think about it, but I landed on KFC. And the reason why is because they're so true to who they are. They believe in what they do and they don't care. It's Friday night football. It's fried. And they focus on it and they do so well. They've been so consistent. They've had 10 years of close to double-digit growth. A little downturn in a economic crisis. But yeah, I really love the focus they have. They know who they are.
Yeah. And the consistency is rare these days when there's so much that's reactive from brands.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And they listen to people who aren't their target market.
Yeah. Fried chicken's pretty good too, hey?
I never use it.
Yeah, me neither. Jon.
Yeah, and I agonised about this a little bit, so I am going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to pick a brand I haven't worked on for 26 years, so I'm hoping that kind of is. But it's always been Guinness for me. It was Guinness before I worked for Guinness. It's been Guinness ever since I kind of left Diageo. Like one of the reasons I went to work for them is I want to go work for that thing. I want to go work for that iconic thing. And it's the advertising, it's the black and white of it, it's the fact that it's the most ubiquitous beer in terms of, like, you can buy it almost anywhere around the world, like, you know.
Consistent as well.
Like as a marketing case study, which kind of, you know, sadly, nerdily, that's my thing, it's just exemplary.
Yeah.
And I can remember working on Guinness back in the late 90s where, like, the MD had set this ambition that we were going to be the biggest beer brand in the UK. And we were like, this is mental. It's like, we're like 8th or something like that. I think we might be 6th or 8th or something like that. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, about 15 years later than that managing director was hoping that was going to happen. But
that never happens. Are you surprised with the growth of it I should be, because they're doing all the right things in all the right order. But I did all the right things in all the right order when I was working on it as well, and it just didn't translate in the same way. So there's Jon ahead of his time.
They would have done such an incredible job of recruiting new drinkers in the last few years, like this guy included, because I was never a huge fan, and now all of a sudden it feels like I almost have to, and I really, really enjoy it. So they have done an exceptional job.
I mean, as I say, I haven't worked on it for 26 years. I would love to go back and understand exactly something must have changed, right?
Yeah.
That's made them more successful than when we were trying our best to do that thing. So someone's done something amazing somewhere.
And we can trim this if it's too cheeky a thing to say, but between the polo shirt and the hair, you've come dressed as a pint of Guinness.
I mean,
as well.
as I say, like, there was a reason why I cheated your rules and picked it, because, like, you know, like, it genuinely is.
Brand advocate.
I love it.
And he does take a long time to warm up as well. So.
And I'm a little bit bitter.
Chris, come back to you just quickly. Where did you grow up? What was life like for you before career started?
Yeah, so I was born in Melbourne, the male of a twin. I've got a twin sister and 2 older brothers. Moved to Sydney when I was 7. Dad was the state manager of Wrigley's and became the national sales manager of Wrigley's chewing gum.
FMCG in the blood.
FMCG in the blood, and had to move to Sydney to do the job. I was the last to go to school. and then get a job. My eldest brother runs and trains thoroughbreds. My middle brother is a nurse. My sister is an agricultural scientist, and I'm in business. They all live in the country now. So, yeah, I'm very different to the rest of my siblings.
The concrete cowboy.
Love it. Correct.
And John?
So much true in that statement. Well, obviously, I'm not from round here. Born in the north of England. Spent my first 26, 27 years either in the kind of Yorkshire or Northumberland kind of area. And then eventually in the UK, if you want a career, like you get sucked into the London metropolis. Like I resisted and resisted, but finally realised that if I wanted career stuff, I wasn't going to find it in the northeast of England. And at that point, I was too ambitious to say no. So then went down to London. And then whilst working with Diageo, got sent to the States for a few years, did a global job based out of the States, then got sent here. And then realised that ambition wasn't everything and that living in Sydney and Australia was a far better ambition to have than just to pursue kind of career outcomes. So
common story.
We stayed here and we've been here 20 odd years now. So I feel like I'm an Australian even if I don't sound like one.
Yeah, fantastic. So focus of the conversation we're going to have today is around your perspectives on leadership and then how that ties into the experience you've had so far with MindPick. But we do want to touch on career stories for both of you guys first briefly. So, John, I might start with you. You've had a really diverse career that's taken you from big businesses like Mars, Diageo, Lion, into Virgin for a while, and then into sort of startup environments and a bit on the non-profit side, for example, with Outward Bound. What have been the driving forces behind the choices that you've made through career?
And I thought this was a really interesting question, actually, because I had to think about it. And the things that have driven me have changed. Like, initially, it was ambition. It was raw, young, ambition. And I wanted progress. And I pursued it, not at all costs, because my life was lovely. I had a fabulous life. But it was like, how do I get to the next step? What are the steps I have to do to go from here to here? Like, if I want to be a CEO by the time I'm in my late 30s or 40s, what are the steps I've got to take? What are the experiences I've got to gather? I'm going to leave my home, like the north of England, and I'm going to go to London, and that'll be fine, even though I've got no friends down there, and all my hobbies don't happen down there. I'm going to leave London. I'm going to go, overseas. They're all driven by that. I've got to get on. And it was a part of me. Like I don't apologize for it. It was a part of me, but looking back, it's a bit shallow, right? It was progress for progress's sake, for title, money, position, whatever the things I was pursuing. And I think part of that deciding that staying in Australia was more important than, taking a GM role with Diageo started to make me ask different questions. Questions about what do I want to do? What makes me happy and what am I good at? And is there a Venn diagram of things that make me happy and things that I'm good at? And I pursued that a bit more. Like I stopped wanting to be a general manager. Like it just happened. It's got one day. I says, I'm going to hate that job. I'm going to hate that job and I'm not going to be great at it because there's loads of that job that are the things I know I'm terrible at and you cannot develop me out of. And there are some things that I'm good at. So that was kind of the second stage of, I'm just going to try and be a bit more the best version of me I can be, but still in the corporate environment because I like the trappings and And then I got to the point where I realized that even if I pursued CMO type roles rather than GM roles, I was still starting to step away from the answer to that question of what makes me happy and what am I great at. I like to do the work. Like I like to solve the problem. I like to put my brain into the thing and I like to go and get immersed in the stuff. And I like to teach and I like to coach and I like to kind of bring young talent on. And those are the two things I love. And you'd like to think that's what a CMO does, but it isn't. They're dealing with the other exec. They're getting people out of the way of the marketing team so the marketing team can do all the work and do all the coaching. They haven't got time to be the teacher and the coach. So I realized that even being the CMO wasn't going to give me what I wanted. So I gave it up. And like all things in business, I've had huge amounts of luck coupled with a small amount of talent, but it's worked out. I've been self-employed for 13 years. We're still afloat. We've made enough money to pay off mortgages and have holidays and things like that. And I get to teach and solve problems. And I wish I could say this was all very deliberate and carefully career planned, and I could show you the document that says, here are my strengths. And no, it's all emerged out of the mess. But I can reflect on it and go, oh, you made some smart choices.
Even
if you made it by accident, 100%. You made smart choices by accident.
Anyone who says that their entire career was perfectly planned out is lying to you. There's always a little bit of planning and intention, and then there's right place, right time, and happy circumstance along the way. But it's a really common story that early career is driven by ambition and just want to go vertical.
Yeah.
But then you've had the realization that actually maybe that's not the right pathway, a little bit more self-awareness, a bit more perspective on things that are important. And ironically, that's unlocked even greater career success than you probably would have had. So it's
and one of the real advantages I have, because I work for some fabulous companies. I started with Mars, moved on to Kona Diageo. Like, they invested in me and in things that, like, you know, it's hard to see the commercial, but they invested in self-awareness and self-understanding and making me think about, you know, myself and what am I good at and like where. And so I came into that stage of my life where I wanted to pursue the up less and think more about, like, with a lot of stuff that I gathered over 20 years of writing down, I'm at my best when I do this, and like, this is when I shine, and like all that kind of self-exploratory stuff. I'd been paid to work that stuff out. I mean, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chris, for you, so you've also spent time in big liquor businesses. And we were talking before we started recording about some of the stories from back in the day in the liquor industry, which I want to do as a bonus episode. And then you've come out of that period of time and now you focus on coaching and developing leaders through your own coaching business and in partnership with MindPick, which we'll come on to. When you look back at your journey, what have been the key inflection points or decisions for you?
Yeah, and to Jon's point, forever grateful for some of the organisations and how they helped me develop what I thought was leadership. To answer the question you asked, Jon, my journey in the early days was as a matter of survival. Met my wife very early, we're still married 33 years, had a child at 21, relatively undereducated, particularly compared to my siblings, and had to go and study and do postgraduate, et cetera, when I was also working. I did a postgraduate degree on an aeroplane while I was National Customer Director for the line. But as Jon said, while I was doing the job and was relatively successful, even though the confidence piece that had troubled me all of my career, they were also teaching me about leadership. And some of the biggest moments in my life was, and I know Tracy doesn't mind me saying it, I did my first lifestyle inventories from Human Synergistics, so the LSI. Tracy Keevers was the head of HR. She was the one who gave me my feedback. Anybody who knows Human Synergistics, it's got red, green and blue behaviours. Blue constructive, red competitive, green avoidant, basically in 5 seconds. I was very red and green, so typical salesperson. Go out and catch the ball, come back and expect the owner to pat me on the head for approval. Certainly wasn't self-actualising, et cetera, And Tracy picked me in one, basically said to me, drew a target on my forehead and said, Chris, you're not the type of person we need in this organisation. Automatically fight or flight. And of course, my reaction was flight. I went and got another job. That wonderful person in my life who I spoke about, my wife, she said to me, you're in the liquor industry. They're a great company. Why don't you stick it out? Because I was going back to grocery. And so I did. And thank God I did, because that was about 6 months in. And then I decided to really have a look at myself. And this is the practice of LSI, LSI 1 and LSI 2. LSI 1 is about what you think about yourself and how you're behaving. And so I basically went inward and said, okay, what don't I like about myself? I don't like that I'm always seeking approval. I don't like that I'm competitive, that I'd run over the top of a colleague to win. I was successful at it in some organisations I work for, but I hated it. And I hated myself for that. So I decided to change. And Tracy and also Bob Barber, who was the Chief People Officer at the time, spoke to me about authenticity. And I decided I'd be my authentic self at work and at home, and so not change. And that's when I basically said, this is the person I'm going to be the best I can be, really make a difference through vulnerability and authenticity. And by the way, let's have a great time doing it.
There's a lot of talk these days about people bringing their authentic selves to work, but it's not often well defined.
Yeah.
I think it's really lovely to hear that perspective on it. And it's not just about throwing off all the shackles and just going, this is me. It's deciding who you want to be and then showing up consistently as that person.
Yeah, the dichotomy in authenticity is that you have to be a chameleon. Well, geez, those are some big words for early in the morning. And the reason why is that you have to be your true authentic self, but you have to do it with skill. So you have to do it in the environment you're in. Now, if I'm sitting in a boardroom, it's going to be a little bit different to myself sitting at the bar having a bet with mates, but I'm still myself. But you just subtly change, and that's where the chameleon piece comes in.
Yeah.
And once you learn that skill, you feel very comfortable in yourself. And if there's any feedback I was ever given as a leader or as a CEO, it was, boy, what we see is what we get. And I said, yep, because I'm not smart enough to pretend, because I can't remember. So if I say something, it's what I really mean.
It's great feedback to get. Let's come on to talk about leadership. So you've both led and developed large teams across your career. Maybe, Jon, starting with you, what's one capability gap that you consistently see in emerging leaders?
I think it's a combination of two things. It's curiosity and then the critical thinking skills to be able to deal with I just got a load of very difficult answers to questions I probably shouldn't have asked in the first place. So it's the ability to be able to deal with the consequences of curiosity. But you have to start with the curiosity thing. Like to ask the question and then ask the question in a different way and then look at the data and then look at the data in a different way and then look at the data in a different way again and then look at the data in a different way again and then ask another question. And just to be incessantly obsessed with, fucking around and finding out really is kind of like, I know it's a slightly kind of crude aphorism, but I do quite a lot of analytical work, and so much of my time is reaching dead ends of like, I've asked 20 questions and I've learned nothing. And then it's the desire, well, ask some different questions because there must be something interesting in it. And then the ability to kind of process that. And it's hard skill to teach. Some of it's innate. You're either curious or you're not curious, but I'm not entirely sure I really believe that. I believe you can foster curiosity in yourself. But nobody ever talked to me about that. And I did loads of leadership training, again, blessed on like so much investment in myself. But I don't remember anything that was about be more curious, ask more questions, take another perspective. And especially, in a world where lots is changing, but also lots of things are staying the same. Like the answer to what have we got to blow up and start again and what do we need to protect at all costs comes through that combination of asking loads and loads of questions and then having the critical thinking ability to be able to go, that's actually exactly how things have been since, 1937. And that's completely different. And we need to go and build a new thing. And I see less of that than I would like.
Yeah.
I see less of it at all levels of the organization, if I'm honest. But, if you're a great CEO, you've unquestionably got at least some of those skills in your toolkit. But it's not as common as I think it needs to be.
And Chris, I saw lots of agreement from you there. Is there anything you'd build on that, or would you add anything different?
Yeah, I think the single biggest development area of most leaders is to truly achieve through others.
Yeah.
And it amazes me how many leaders grow up and continue to be managers and think they should be rewarded for doing things right rather than working out what the right thing to do is. And once you work that out, you then need to work out why. And a lot of leaders go, I'm responsible for strategy. Let's get into strategy. Well, actually, it's the last thing you do. What you've got to do is work out your hedgehog. I love Good to Great. It's 27 years old, 25 years old, but it's still so true. So the hedgehog theory from Good to Great, or the model, what are you deeply passionate about? Jon is deeply passionate about doing, I want to get stuff done. And he worked that out. And, that's inspirational because he worked out where he's going to be happy and where he's going to be great. Work out what you're passionate about. One thing I ask in my consulting and particularly in my advisory and even in some interviews, because I thought I wanted to go back to corporate life and I worked out that was stupidity. I asked chairman, what would the customer miss if you didn't exist? And that is, what are you best in your world at? And it is amazing how many of them just sit there and go, oh my God, that's a good question. And they can't answer it. And then because we're commercial beasts, even non-for-profits are commercial beasts, probably harder than corporate. What is my economic engine? How do I make money? Let's flip it back to what I'm deeply passionate about, which is your purpose. I do workshops on strategy and I ask in pre-work questions of organisations, what is your purpose? And I'll get 5, 6, 7 different answers from a cohort of executives. And 99% of the time, it isn't the purpose that is sitting below their brand because they never think about it. And unless you get those 3 questions right, you can't go to strategy. If you get them right, the strategy falls out. It just gets onto a piece of paper pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So achieving through others and then working out where you want those others to go is something that a lot of leaders lack.
And why so many sort of new or recently appointed leaders get stuck at that level because they can't manage the transition. And
can I add? Because I completely concur. And it is a difficult thing we ask of the leader, which is to be great enough at doing the job to have achieved that position, because there are times when we need you to be the smartest person, but to actually park all of that and have the humility to go, I just need to enable you to go do the best you can. It's a big ask, but the best ones I've ever worked for are people like, I wish you'd give me the answer because I know you're smarter than me and you'd be able to do that. And then they're utterly refusing to do that and going, no, you're plenty good enough to do this on yourself. Let me just help you along the way. Those were the best. And the ones who wanted to tell me what to do and wanted to insist that they were smarter than me and that they had better answers than me, those people were harder to work for.
And so, Chris, so those are the gaps that we're seeing. Are there any particular leadership skills that you think will become even more important in future?
Culture as the business driver. Harvard Business Review wrote an article on culture, and a quote came out of it and said, culture will be the only differentiator in business in the future. Why? The smartest person in the room today is the one who is the most inquisitive, and the one who is the most inquisitive is the one who asks the questions of, used to be Google, it's now ChatGPT. You can get an answer for just about anything, but you have to ask the right questions. So you have to be absolutely inquisitive. And when you walk into the room and you think you're the smartest, no, you're not. And so therefore you have to enable a culture where you are actually enabling people to be the best they can be. And look, I used to think I didn't have an ego. I was really proud of that. And when I stood down from the CEO, I realised I had an ego because I loved being perceived as the most important person in the room. But I always and sometimes struggled with wanting to be the last one to speak. Don't give your opinion because of all of a sudden, you've heard in businesses, Brad said, and Brad, great CEO, Brad Banducci of Woolworths. And I used to hear people say, Brad said, and that used to infuriate me. And then when I became CEO of ALM, I heard people say, Chris said, I go, no. So quickly in corporate life, the leader's opinion within 24 hours becomes gospel. And guess what? I'm not always right. In fact, it's a good chance 50% of the time I'm not. So if I'm putting a question forward, don't think it's my opinion. And you have to enable that. And that's through a culture of my team being able to say to me, hey, Chris, that's stupid, and celebrate it.
When I worked at Twinings, the leadership team got in the habit of asking their GM whenever he put forward an opinion, is that a perspective or a directive?
Great question.
Do I need to go and get the business mobilized behind what you've just said, or are you just giving an opinion? And 9 times out of 10, he would go, no, it's just my thought or opinion in the moment. Yeah.
And by the way, when you've got a directive, it endures because you don't often do it. So when you really know something has to be done, because sometimes in leadership, you have more information than others, particularly when you're in a public organisation, you can't share that information you've got. Guys, this time you just really need to trust me.
Yeah.
And they go, Chris never does that. I'll go and run through that wall for you.
And Jon, emerging skills or what will be more important in future?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly terrifying how much I've learned about how to do things better. Now I don't have to actually do it for anybody anymore, which just sometimes it excites me because I like to learn, and sometimes it depresses me that I didn't know these things when I could actually have used them. But dealing with complexity, right? We're taught as leaders and managers to plan, to try and predict the future and kind of plan for it, to set goals and objectives that we strive towards, right? And yet, when you understand what complexity really is and how you manage in complex environments, it's almost the opposite is true. You're setting boundaries rather than objectives. You're allowing plans to emerge rather than to be set and to be dogmatically followed. You're creating structures to allow people to make their own autonomous decisions within a set of constraints. And it's the opposite to how I was taught to do business planning and strategy planning. And, strategy planning slightly kind of contradiction in terms in some ways. And I don't see an embracing of some of these new ideas about how you manage the trajectory of a business. Like, we're still waterfall planning and setting KPIs, and like the sky is falling at the end of Q1 when we hit a number that we guessed like 12 months ago was going to be the right number, and now we're blowing everything up and starting again because, no surprise, the future did not appear exactly as we had planned it to appear. And yet we've got a huge body of work now that talks about what complexity is and how to manage it and how to have purposeful direction and to take the business in a strategic way without getting tangled up in the traditional planning methodologies. And the more I learn about that, the more I wish I'd understood that when I was writing strategy and kind of setting business direction, because it's very different. And the amount of business process change that ought to happen if you embrace it, the way you think about the financial plan of the business and the need to, there's still the need to operate, to go, well, we can't just spend whatever we feel like spending and sell, whatever happens to go out the door today. There's a need for some of that. But so much changes when you understand that businesses almost all of the time operate in a complex environment where the past does not predict the future, and no amount of analysis of the past is going to tell you what's going to happen in the future. Therefore, it is de facto impossible to create a plan that will survive contact with the future.
Yeah.
And no surprise, I don't know how many businesses you work with, Chris, but most of mine have blown up the plan at the end of Q1 and went, well, that's not working. And the management team look around surprised that it's happened again for the 35th year running.
Well, there's a quote from Sun Tzu, and he talks about planning is essential. I won't get the quote right, but planning is essential. But as soon as you go into battle, all of your planning goes out the window. But if you haven't planned, it's the sure noise before defeat.
Yeah, or the Mike Tyson version of everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Exactly. That's probably more articulate way to say it, but you're right. Yeah. But if you haven't done the planning, you will fail.
Yeah.
The thing I see create more stress, distress, and underperformance in businesses is the overambitious set of targets set in the business plan that then just makes everything tactical all of the time because we're just chasing a number that somebody arbitrarily agreed.
Yes.
Like usually at least 6 months before that.
I used to joke with an old leader of ours, James Wrigley. I used to go, there is one meeting he is brilliant in, and that's presenting our plan to the board. Because guess what? That sets you up for the whole year. And it's you as the leader and the board who sets that plan. But you're right. It's a guess.
Yeah.
It's wrong. The second you're right,
wrong.
it's always wrong.
Like you might hope it might be close to right. That's a good year. But literally, it's hopes and dreams and wishes.
Yes.
It's not helpful. It's really, really not a helpful business practice. The quarterly cycle, the annual cycle, all of those things get in the way of proper long-term
3 + 9, 6 + 6, 9 + 3.
Yeah.
Corporates create their own work.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, you mentioned in there embracing new ideas. So let's segue on to MindPick.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know from both of you, Chris, I might start with you. What drew you to playing the mentoring role that you now do within MindPick? What made you say yes?
Certainly Paul Bull, and having known him and associated with him, and then we met, I love the idea. And I love the idea that you get a group of people together who have experience, and the way I'd articulate it, take on some shrapnel, but it hasn't been fatal, who can be inquisitive and learn from a group of people who want to learn, and then also share with them their experiences of how they saw that problem emerge and how they dealt with it. And if they take away one gem, you're giving back and they're learning from some of the mistakes you made in your career. Equally, and the surprising thing, from disingenuous to say surprising, I learn a hell of a lot from the cohort, from what they're experiencing, from the way they're doing things and the things that I would have done very differently today, the tools that they have. But the one thing I have learned, particularly from one group, which is an emerging piece of technology for a lot of businesses, is the leader will say, oh, we need to do this. Let's use the example of AI. We need to do this, but they don't know why. And I've seen a group of people who are in digital and they've been thrown into a role, but they haven't been given the tools. And the rest of the business doesn't really know why they're there. And it's so hard for them. So again, you've got to have that plan to say, this is why we're doing this. This is the reason why the consumer needs it, et cetera, et cetera. So I've learned that kind of thing, that still in leadership, if you don't give the direction, you don't communicate widely, and often people don't have the direction. And it's one of the things I've learned from some of the cohorts.
Yeah. And so it's been a learning experience for you, as well as one in which you've imparted your knowledge and your wisdom. Jon, as you've gone through the process, what's stood out to you about this next generation of industry talent coming through? What's been your impression of them?
I mean, it's been really reassuring in some ways, in that, like, you know, there is a generation of marketing talent that's coming through that I've got a huge level of admiration for. Like, you know, certainly if you believe the kind of LinkedIn-osphere, marketers are a bunch of idiots obsessed with chasing kind of tactics and, like, you know, only ever think about digital. And it's LinkedIn's a different world, right? These are capable, broad, commercially minded marketers. And I'm not surprised by that, by the way, because I spend my life around marketers. I know that they're not like that. But it's good to get out of my client base and into a kind of broader world. Oh, no, I could generally say that marketers, actually, some of the tactics of marketing are changing. Marketers remain, like, you know, the types of people that I always wanted to be associated with, like, you know, smart and curious and, like, commercially minded, but, you know, more focused on the long term, less focused on the short. So I've been really encouraged that, you know, marketing isn't, you know, in the midst of a tactical crisis because people doing marketing, like, are not getting seduced by that bullshit.
Yeah.
But because at the edges, at the tactical edges of marketing, so much is shifting. To Chris's point, we've now got AI going, oh, it's going to change marketing. No, it isn't. Like, it might change how we make a certain type of advertising. That's kind of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of a bit of what marketing should be. But you can see the stress, that pressure that comes from the leaders who are like, oh, no, we're marketing. We must be in social and we must be in AI, and sort me out an e-commerce plan. We must have one immediately because everybody's got one. Like, a lack of thoughtful leadership puts stress on the marketing department to do things that potentially it shouldn't. Or at least that it should do in a much more considered, thoughtful, kind of long-term kind of way. And I can see them under those stresses as well.
Yeah.
My boss is saying we need this. Be more digital. Like, what does your boss mean by digital? I have no idea and he has no idea.
That's right.
Like, it's an indefinable term. Like, but I've got to do it because it's now in my KPIs and we wrote it in the business plan that we'd be more digital.
The lure of shiny new things.
And sometimes, let's be clear, I spend my time with marketers. Some of that is very much their own fault. Like, they like a shiny new thing. But much of it also comes from outside the organization who think they know what marketing is and therefore ask it to do things that they think marketing should be. And there's a general misunderstanding of what marketing is, how brands grow, those types of things, that we really do need to spread that gospel beyond, you know, the brand manager population.
Yeah. And on that shiny object, and I see it a lot in my business, and it's generally from the leader. And I ask the teams, so has the boss got SOS, shiny object syndrome? and SOS generally means you haven't nailed your platform, your base. You haven't delivered on what you said you're going to deliver because it's the next best thing. And the best leaders are the people who actually say, right, we've got that. It's now in our flywheel. It's now unconsciously competent in that as a business, starting at unconsciously incompetent right through to the steps of learning to be unconsciously competent. My golf swing is nowhere near that yet. I'm consciously incompetent. And when you know that as an organisation, you then don't jump into that shiny new object because you're not going to be able to handle it. You can't cope with it because you haven't nailed what you said you've got to do anyway.
And so you've both been spending lots of time working with emerging leaders on driving those shifts in competence, which must have been incredibly rewarding. What have you found most rewarding about the experience with MindPick so far?
A group of people who are growing.
Yeah.
And they come on MindPick because they want to. And they're willing to listen, not pick up the phone and say, Chris, I've got this problem, or I've just been made redundant. Can you help? And you know what that helping is? And I'm still surprised that people pick up the phone and say, Chris, can you help? But what they're asking for is, can you listen? And they share the problem. You build their confidence. You give them some tools. I've got a few CVs over the years that I've just loved. I've seen people's CVs and I've gone, that's jumped out. Redact it, give it to them. Here's a CV that you should use. One thing that we were taught at university that was bad is plagiarism. In business, it is a wonderful thing. Just do it better than the next person did. And so here's a few CVs that I've noticed are great, and here you go. And I had a guy recently who wrote a marketing plan for himself on his own person. It was brilliant. So I'm now starting to share that with people. So they're the kind of things you see people grow, and you take those 1%ers, those gems, and you give it to others. And, 1,990, you take 1%, give it to the 9, give it to the 90, and all of a sudden you're creating value for people.
Yeah. And Jon, there's plenty of leadership programs around. What do you think makes MindPick different?
I think there's a couple of things. The peer-to-peer learning thing, this isn't the only way of doing that, but because the peer-to-peer learning is at the heart of this, I think that really kind of stands out. They're sharing experiences with people that they can see are in similar situations, and, the things they're struggling with, other people are struggling with at the same time. If they haven't thought of the answer, it's not because they're dumb or stupid or don't know. It's because they're actually wrestling with something complicated and complex. And sometimes somebody in the room will have a gem to offer, but a lot of the value is in that, oh yeah, I've done that. That's really difficult. It's not really easy to solve that problem, is it? Those are really, that kind of, the support of just knowing that where you are is a perfectly reasonable and acceptable place to be, builds confidence. And so great, try a few different ways of stuff. We tried this didn't work, don't do that. We tried this, I think it might be working, you can have a go at that. Rather than the dogmatic, here is the process and the tool and the way of doing this, go operate the process, you get a much more rounded set of there isn't really a right answer to that, and we failed horribly with that, and this might be working. You could I love that for people, because it's the learning is there, but the confidence building that you weren't stupid to have had this problem in the first place is also there. The other thing I think that's different is it is functionally specific. In many organizations, you can get leadership training and personal development and team development and that. There's not a huge amount of functional skills development. I mean, the half of my business is marketing functional skills training and development, and I've managed to make a business out of that. That's because there's not a lot of it. Outside of Mr. Ritson's esteemed kind of sheep dip, there isn't a lot of marketing skills training out there, and I've built a product out of that. But here we are, a group of marketers talking about marketing things, wanting to understand how marketing works. And we're not doing some of the stuff we've been talking about. How do I develop humility as a leader? We're a little bit of that, but we're mostly going, why is this advertising bloody awful? And how do I fix it? And how can I make that amount of money work to achieve that objective? And I'm trying to launch a new product, but I've got all these problems with my, so it's right in the immediacy of their world. Even if we're talking strategy, it's the immediate strategy problem that they've got around their job. And so I think that's hugely different in many ways, which is we get to talk about our function and the skills that we have to do the special bit of our job. That was what drew me to it, because this is just an adjunct of, another part of my business. I'm just finding another way of helping marketers build marketing skills to be better at marketing.
Chris, anything you'd build on that? What do you think it is about MindPick that's made it already so successful in the time that it's existed?
One of the large aspects is the networking. And as Jon said, when you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper, with a problem that you just don't think you can jump over, having a conversation with other people with like minds, like functions can be the breakthrough, because you're not the only one in the world who has this problem. And it almost releases you and say, okay, I can do this. It gives me the confidence. But then that networking. And as we get older, more mature in our careers and our thinking, you realize how much networking, a warm lead is so much easier to have a conversation than LinkedIn. Hi, I'd like to see you. Crickets, ghosting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these emerging leaders understanding the value of having a network within your industry, but not your category, is just critical. And I think that's one of the reasons why MindPick was invented, to create this cohort of future leaders who can pick up the phone and say, hey, what about? And it might be in 10 years' time. And it's so important to have that network.
Yeah.
I just want to endorse that as well. The networking aspect of this is part of its real power. Fred Luthans ages ago published kind of research about what made successful and effective managers, and networking skills was the area of management skill that he identified as having the most effect, particularly on people's careers, as well as the effectiveness of their work. And yet, did you ever go on a networking training program in any of the great organizations you worked for?
Never.
And it's weird, right? It's in the management literature. Like, it's well-respected kind of management researcher. Like, it's not particularly academic work. It's like, I've read the work. It's easy to digest. Like, and here he is, right at the top. If you want to be a success, you better learn how to network.
Yeah.
And who does networking training?
Yeah, and I think I would third what you're both saying as well, because I think it's very much in the FMCG industry's interest to facilitate this sort of networking and connections, because it raises capability and opportunity across the board. But I don't think we're great at doing it. I know that speaking with people in liquor companies, that's still a slightly different experience because it's a more collegiate sort of industry. There's more events, they see each other more frequently. Yeah, it creates sociability. In FMCG, it's amazing the number of people I've spoken to who've gone on MindPick and gone, I thought it was just me.
We're not getting together over a yogurt.
Yeah, exactly. They go, I thought it was just me that had this problem. Or so I thought it was just me that was having problems with this particular customer or whatever. So I think that can't be overstated. So love to hear from you both. We covered a lot of reasons there as to why MindPick is a great thing for someone to be involved with. If there's someone listening to this that's going, oh, I'm curious about MindPick, or they may be considering getting involved, asking their business if they can get involved, what would be your elevator pitch? Why should someone join a MindPick growth pod?
You are learning from others and offering others learnings. You're building your network. And to be brutally honest, in the whole scheme of things for your leader, it's 2/5 of nothing in cost. And the enormity that you will get out of it for not just your current role, but future roles and future businesses, particularly that networking side. And you're also learning from people who have done it, not necessarily done it properly. Because some of the best learnings I've ever had is the mistakes I've made.
I mean, at the risk of blowing both Chris's and my trumpet, like the other bit, I agree with what Chris always said, like the peer-to-peer stuff is the real part. But you're also getting access to very seasoned industry professionals as the mentors. And to Chris's point, most of whom have left the traditional pursuit of career goals aside. So people who are very comfortable going, oh yeah, I did that. It was a complete disaster. And I mean, like, we're really comfortable in our mistakes, really happy to share, like, where we've gone wrong, which, you know, is in itself another massive advantage. Like, you know, to pay for Chris or I to come along for a day and just kind of is very expensive compared to, you know, you get, you know, hours and hours of that time out of us for your joint.
I've never thought of it like that, but our day rate versus the rate of MindPick is substantially less.
Yeah, and that's not to overinflate the role of the mentor, right? Like, it's like the real value is in the network and the peer-to-peer. But you do get that as a little kind of bonus.
And the facilitation of the conversation that happens, right?
Yeah, well, I realised, so for years I'm trying to learn. I really enjoyed coaching. I enjoyed trying to achieve through others and seeing the success of others, which means it was the success of myself because I ran the business or I was a leader in the business. And then all of a sudden you blink and somebody says, I want to learn from you. Once you realise that people want to learn from you, you then get into that mode. And it's not hubris in any way. It is, I've had 30 years in industry, 25 in liquor. I've worked in retail and supplier land. I could argue both sides of the fence relatively well because I've done it. I know the buyer tactics. I know the BS that comes out of a supplier sometimes, and even role playing. So I often will role play with the client. Okay, you've got a trading terms discussion. I'm going to play the retailer because I've done that. I've been trained by Woolworths. Not a bad retailer. And so you get that experience. And because we haven't got a corporate to answer to, you know, I've got my boss to answer to, which is Samantha in reality. And that's it. So therefore we can say it how we believe it.
Yeah, pretty compelling pitch for anyone that's on the fence about MindPick. If you do need approval for that, very affordable budget, get them to listen to this. Thank you both for coming on. Guys, it's flown by. Really interesting conversation. We've covered a lot of ground and I think there's a lot here for people to take away. So thank you both so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Welcome. Nice to be here.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We'll be back soon with more great career conversations. And in the meantime, if you want to help with your own career journey, reach out to me or one of the expert team at AXR Recruitment and Search. See you next time. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.